Hello there and welcome back. We're going to continue the underpainting. So last time we developed some of the forms for the eyes. Now this is the same day for me, so all of this is still wet. So I'm going to work on the nose, the cheeks, and maybe we'll make it down to the mouth. So let's go ahead and remix the value scale on the palette. So I'm basically just recharging it. So I'm just taking right from the value scale that you're seeing me recharge here. So I just recharge it with a larger brush, and then when we get into these smaller shapes, we'll just be using the smaller brushes again. So I'm just going to be using small synthetic round brushes. This is a synthetic 2 round brush. So let's go ahead and take a look at the side plane of the nose. Pretty much right at the side of the nasal bone. So if you want to know exactly what materials I'm using, you can always go ahead and scroll down to the description box below and I'll have all that information typed up for you. So we're going to look at the side plane of the nose. So I'm relating this value to the value for the glabella. They look almost the same on the photograph, but in nature, I have a feeling that the side plane of the nose should be a little darker. Maybe just a tiny bit darker than the plane for the glabella. Just because that plane should be facing away from the light a little bit more. Now photographs tend to compress the values, which is fine. We're certainly trying to compress the value range for the underpainting. But we want to make sure not to flatten out the image. That is to lose track of the three-dimensionality. So we want to think very three-dimensional now. So it's going to be a little lighter here as we approach the tear duct. That's kind of a band-aid line. So now we're going to work our way down here. And we're going to approach the wing of the nose. Now this shape is going to get darker as it curls into the wing of the nose. Very dark over here. Then it's going to get lighter as we approach the top plane of the nose. So right over here, there's going to be a little dark light, and then it's going to get lighter. And now you should start to be seeing the nose kind of emerge from these value transitions. Well, at least the side of the nose. Now, as we work our way towards the other side of the nose, there's going to be a very subtle but noticeable drop in value. Now, this is overdoing it, but just to kind of show the transition. Of course, I'm going to come back and make this lighter. And again, I'm just taking right from my palette the values that I mixed up already. Sometimes I'll just get a palette knife and mix each individual value, but other times, like with this one, I've just mixed it with a large brush and I'm just taking right from the little band of values. So a little bit lighter here as the nose begins to face the light much more. So right about here, it's going to be pretty bright. This is the top plane of the nose, nasal bone right there. Might have made it too bright, so we'll bring it down just a little bit. Now let's work our way down towards the wing of the nose. So here's this side plane that we indicated in the poster image. So a little side plane there. Then it's going to get lighter right next to it. A little darker over here. And now we're approaching the shadow shape. So this area here is going to get darker. So that is the value for the dark light. And now we're going to start to make the values progressively lighter as we walk our way up towards the top plane of the bulb of the nose. A little bit lighter here. Now this is stuff that could potentially take years to learn. How to look at each individual shape and kind of pick and choose which values you want. So for instance, the side of the wing of the nose here, I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Even though on the photograph it's harder to see that. Now these are things that could take years and years and years to learn. I'm aware of that, but I'm trying to give you most of the experience. As much of the experience as I possibly can. And that's why I've been uploading every single day for the past, I don't even know what video this is, 6 or 7? Not sure. Of this series. So I'm really trying to give you the entire process so you can see it unfold day by day. And hopefully this is helping you out for those of you that have been following the development of this painting. So let's go ahead and go over the outline for the light and shadow shape again. So right here we have the little angle that goes down to the root of the nose right over here that we indicated in the poster study, or the poster image. So a little bit of burnt umber here for the nostril. Think about the nostril as kind of the contour. So the dark of the nostril here, think about it as the contour of the side of the nose. I'm going to use the fan brush very lightly. Remember last time my fan brush almost took out one of the eyes, which means it's about time to get a new one. So moving on down, the bulb of the nose is right here, and it has to communicate with the middle of the upper lip. It's going to get a little darker here near the back of the wing of the nose. So the paint, I'm pretty much just using the mineral spirits. Nope, I'm not. I'm using the thinner that I introduced to you during the poster image, and that thinner is essence, citrus essence. So again, I mentioned in that video, the reason I'm using the citrus essence is because it, just like spike lavender, if any of you are familiar with spike lavender is like an alternative to using odorless mineral spirits as a brush cleaner and paint thinner. It's marketed as a safer alternative, the spike lavender, and I wanted to get the spike lavender because it had a fast drying property, but I couldn't find it. It wasn't available at the time, so the other thing I could get was the citrus essence, and so I'm using the citrus essence to just thin out the paint a little bit. So for instance, this little shape here, I thinned out the paint with the citrus essence thinner. So far I like it. I've only been using it for a couple weeks with my studio work. So let's see, a little bit of a shape here. So her nose is, or the nose is a little sharper than I have it. I have it a little too round. Let's go ahead and re-establish this angle, making sure that the bulb of the nose isn't moving from its point, from where it should be. So that plane change is a little better. And of course the cast shadow of the nose is going to need to get a little darker. I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Now let's go ahead and add some of the highlights. So we're just sprinkling on some of the highlights. Now with this brush, I'm going to go into the middle tone region of the value scale. I'm going to thin out the paint a little bit with the thinner. Just try to make this edge a little softer. Now let's go ahead and soften this a little bit. As much as I like this little chop, I'm going to just soften it. In an alla prima, I probably would have left it kind of like little chops that it had before. Just soften very lightly with the fan brush. Go ahead and put in this little dark accent here for the root of the nose. So now perhaps the wing of the nose on the other side needs to come down a little bit. So this might need to push down. So again, I just thinned out the paint with the thinner that I mentioned earlier. Pushing this all the way down. So I think that's a little better. Now let's go ahead and work on the the cheekbone structure. So switching brushes now, I'm going to look at actually going to make the shadow a little darker. So I thinned out the paint a little bit. Very carefully now, just going over the shadow shape. Alright, so for the cheekbone, let's go ahead and take a look at the dark light once again. So this little shape here. So this is the dark light. The distinction as light turns into shadow. It's also the darkest halftone. Now as we work our way out, let's create a little band of value here. So that's going to be the bottom of the cheekbone. And we're going to do the same kind of thing over here. So darker right around there. Then it's going to get progressively lighter. So here we have the top plane of the cheek. This is kind of a connecting plane. So this plane right here is connecting the side plane of the nose to the maxilla region. This little region encompassing the nose. Now it's going to be kind of tricky here. So it's going to be a little lighter here. I'm going to have to keep referring to my drawing to see how I handled this in the drawing. So I made this a little more flat than I'm painting it right now, and it kind of made sense in the drawing, so don't want to deviate too much from the drawing. It's going to be a little darker down here. I'm going to use the fan brush to eliminate some glare. Now let's go ahead and reaffirm this dark light. And I think that's all right for now. So I'm going to take a look at the other side. So the other side, let's see, in my drawing it's much more flat. So remember, I keep referring to my drawing. So if you haven't seen the videos prior to this one, the way that I did this was I created a transfer drawing, just using graphite pencils, and then I transferred the lines onto the panel. But I also shaded the drawing a little bit to get an idea of how to handle the forms, which is, at this stage of the underpainting, it's actually very useful to me. So it's going to be a little darker here, and then it's going to pick up light again just beneath the bottom of the nose. And now we're going to be approaching the mouth. Just going to make a little subtle value transition here. Subtlety meaning that the values are differentiated, yet they're very similar, very close. That's what I mean by subtlety. Such as this top plane here for the cheekbone. It's there, but it's very subtle. We're going to look for the same kind of thing on the other side. So that plane is somewhere over here. Now we're going to move over to the mouth. So the mouth, we're going to think about the structure encompassing the mouth. That is this dark shape right here. So that's pretty close to being in shadow. I think it's still in the light, the shape here, but it's super close to the shadow. Then it's going to get lighter over here. Then on the side here, it's going to get a little darker. And that's, of course, going to necessitate the dark shapes for the mouth. So right there, going to make the cast shadow beneath the mouth a little more evident. So here's the side of the mouth. So for now, I'm going to flatten out the dark shapes, meaning just one uniform value. Now I'm going to return to the surrounding shapes. So that's going to get lighter over here. In comparison to the values for the lips. So this is going to be darker, but not as dark as the shadow of the lips. See how simple these comparisons are? Lighter than the dark of the lips, but darker than the light on the face. That simple. So now as we work our way out, just like we did with the drawing, there's going to be a little form overlap here. Right over here. So overlap meaning light, dark, light. Lighter over here. It's going to be a little bit darker here. At least darker than the values right above it. And while we have this value, let's go ahead and spread it on the lower lip. And make it a little lighter down here. Not being terribly careful. I'm pretty confident now that I know where the shapes need to fit. This transition is going to be a little darker. Same kind of thing is going to happen on the other side. So darker there, and then there's going to be another form overlap. Remember, form overlap means basically light, dark, really dark, then light, then probably dark again. That's what I mean by form overlap. So it's going to be darker near the outline because this area is turning away from the light, and then lighter as we approach the chin. Not that light. Let's go ahead and bring it down. It's a little better. So let's go back into the dark shape for the chin. Just flatten out the dark for now. Now let's paint in the dark light. So now we're walking our way over to the top plane of the chin. That is the top plane of the chin, lightest area. So one thing that helped me in my earlier years learning one thing that helped me learn how to differentiate certain value transitions based on their angles with respect to the light. One of the things that basically helped me with values is cast drawing, cast painting, where I would spend maybe a month or 2 months on a drawing of a cast, a plaster cast. It's a very classical way of learning, and I never took a formal cast class. That is a class where you would render a cast or study it for the entire semester. Instead, I kind of did that on my own. And that really did help me to learn how to see tone, how to see value, and how to understand value transitions. So again, I'm just reestablishing this boundary between light and dark. It's a little angle that comes out there. I'm just going to soften this little edge here and add the light plane, or the top plane receiving the light, right above the upper lip. Just wanted to soften that edge really. So now let's get into the forehead. So let's start off with the side plane of the forehead. I think I should probably recharge the palette. So just recharging the value scale. All right, so I'm going to be taking directly from the value scale. So let's start off with the side plane of the forehead. And I guess this value will do. Now this value is an exaggeration because I know that this shape is going to be getting dark. And I'm going to do the same thing, but a little lighter on the other side. These are both exaggerations. That is, I'm pushing them a little bit darker than need be. Oof, gotta be very careful with my fan brush. So even lighter up here. So again, let's just push it a little bit. So again, a little darker than need be. Let's go ahead and make sure that this edge is soft. Nice and soft. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Let's push that darker again. And now it's starting to glare, so let's use the fan brush. Very carefully now. Alright, so I pushed these edges a little darker than need be so that I could come back in and do this. And in a matter of seconds, we have the forehead. So that's just kind of a little trick, just pushing the darks way darker than they need to be, especially when you have a very compressed value range there. But I'm going to go ahead and just push the light a little bit on the forehead. So that's really bright. So what we're going to do is just continue to take from the value scale and just build on top of that shape that we had just established. I'm applying less pressure as I approach the boundary of each side. So that is less, and even less pressure right there. See how we're starting to create that gradation of form? So more pressure in the areas that are lighter, and less pressure in the areas that are darker. So this is just a very quick and easy way to obtain a forehead. I'm going to use the fan brush to help eliminate some glare. So there is a little bit of light here for the frontal ridge of the skull. So now we have another form overlap. Again, you know what that means. Light, dark, light, dark. And this whole side should probably be lighter. Now, one thing that I'm starting to notice is that little mark there. So let's go ahead and kind of even this out. So again, using a vertical and my transfer drawing, I see that this might have to move out a little bit, which is not a problem. I'm going to take the smaller brush, maybe a little lighter than that. I'm going to move everything, just kind of pull this towards the outside shape. See, to about there, to about there. And I got to make sure that the root of the nose is still communicating with the middle of the upper lip. Just a simple little drawing thing. So that's a little better. Another thing I noticed that I was kind of missing is the so this eye has a little bit of light, so there is a tiny little sparkle of light there, but again, like I said before in yesterday's video, I don't think I have a brush small enough for these little sparkles. Super tiny, very tiny. Not even sure if that's going to show up on camera. Very, very tiny. And with a clean brush, relatively clean, we're going to soften these shapes here on the other side too. Now with the fan brush, I'm going to try very carefully eliminate some glare. Still a little more softening that I could do. Of course, that creates a glare. And so, of course, the hair needs a little bit of a value transition. So I'll tell you what, like I mentioned in the transfer drawing, this edge here, the edge between the hairline and the hair itself, is an extremely soft edge. So I'm going to go ahead and just make it really, really soft first. And now I'm going to go in with the value for the hair, just taking from the darker region of the palette. So I'm going to go ahead and paint in the rest of the shape for the hair. And at this point, the paint's actually starting to dry. So I think I'm just going to let it dry overnight, and I'll see you on the next day. But of course, there's always something I'm forgetting to do, and let's go ahead and do that. So this edge here was just starting to bother me. So remember, like I said, with the underpainting, I just want all the edges to be fairly soft. Not too soft, but that edge definitely needed to get a little softer. I think that's a little better. Maybe a little more. Very soft. Alright, I'll see you on the next one.